Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar titled The Art and Science Behind Successful Lean Transformations. My name is Mark Graban. I am the VP of Improvement and Innovation Services for KaiNexus, and I'm going to be the host and moderator. Sam MacPherson is somebody I feel fortunate to have gotten to know a little bit just over the past year or two in the Lean community. He's an internationally recognized Lean enterprise transformation leader and has dedicated over 28 years to developing organizational leadership, senior leadership teams, and designing Lean enterprise management systems. Following the attacks of September 11, 2001, Sam was recalled to active military service to serve as the Director of Special Operations Plans for the elite United States Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, during Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Now, Sam was introduced to TPS and the Shingo method, Shigeo Shingo, in the mid-1980s while serving as a project leader for him. Sam's led industry award-winning Lean transformations as a plant manager for Crown, Cork, and Seal. And he has a whole varied range of experiences here. He co-founded the Lean Leadership Academy with Art Smalley and Russ Scafferty to help organizations develop their organizational leadership pipeline and properly implement TPS as a comprehensive system to achieve business and organizational excellence. So Sam, you're worthy of a good intro there, and we're ready for you to start with what I'm sure is going to be a great presentation. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Mark. I'm absolutely fired up about being exposed to this tremendous audience that you have, and the opportunity to reach the KaiNexus community as well. So today we're going to talk a lot about a different side of a Lean transformation. I've spent years with transformation, whether it was Lean or whether it was working with cultures across the world through my special operations background. And there's certain fundamental truths about being successful, to successfully conducting a transformation. And so what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to share with the audience some things that, honestly, the science behind the transformation. Most often than not, when I work with a client and some of my team work with a client, they struggle with changing from how they used to be to how they want to be. And sometimes there are reasons for why they struggle, and sometimes I have to approach it from a scientific perspective and explain, well, a successful Lean transformation is both an art and a science, and we're going to talk about some of the things that are necessary for you to do and to understand in order to have the belief level you'll need in order to be a successful leader of a transformation. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that generally is probably not well understood out in the Lean community, but should be, in order to strengthen our ability to be successful in a Lean transformation. And I certainly hope that it's both informative and entertaining. So everybody break out your pencils and your notebooks, and we'll get ready to talk about some pretty cool stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today, a couple of items here. Number one, we've passed the introduction. What's the current state of Lean and Lean transformations? Number two, what are the prerequisites of a successful Lean transformation? Number three, what are the reasons why leading a Lean transformation fails? So what are the most common reasons why Lean transformations struggle and fail? What's the current state of Lean transformational approaches? And then I'm going to talk a little bit beyond the normal understanding, what we call Little's Law. And for those of you who do not know what it really is, a queuing formula that kind of forms the basis of just-in-time. So most people know the scientific principles behind flow, but don't know a lot about the scientific principles behind a successful transformation. So we're going to go beyond Little's Law to help you kind of to build a good understanding and argument for being successful in your Lean transformation. And then I'm going to actually talk a little bit about lean leadership development, which I can't really separate from the transformation, and how can that help you create a culture of excellence as part of your lean transformation and developing lean leaders that can lead the future of your organization. And then we're going to talk about some things we can do to jumpstart your lean transformation. So what is the current state of the lean transformation? Well, I've been lucky enough to work quite closely for a number of years with the Shingo Institute. And a couple of years ago, Art Smalley and I tapped into the resources of the Shingo Institute and really had that question, why, you know, how many organizations that attempted a lean transformation to the point where they wanted to actually apply for the Shingo Prize, how many of them are still doing that today? How many of them are successful today? And so both from the research that Art Smalley and I did, as well as some follow-up research with both the past director of the Shingo Prize, Bob Miller, and the current director of the Shingo Prize or the Shingo Institute, Ken Snyder, we kind of crunched the numbers and came out with basically this X and Y diagram that kind of shows where people who have started a lean transformation, where they ended up, and at what point in their transformation journey did they end up there. So what we found out is that 95% of the organizations that attempt a lean transformation generally will return back to somewhere close to their original state with between 5 and 7 years, if not earlier. A good 80% of them will do it between 2 and 3 years, and there's some reasons for that. And so what we're looking for is that path A, or at minimum that path B that we see that's less than 5% of the organizations that begin a lean transformation journey actually get to where they institutionalize and begin to mature as a lean organization after 5 years. So there's some reasons for that, and there's some things that we need to look at, which is the point of today's conversation, is what is causing that 95% of the folks that want to be part of a lean journey to actually digress back to their original state in anywhere from 5 to 7 years, and we want to be able to prevent that. So obviously, probably the biggest reason for this is our own fault in the lean leadership community, because we tend to share Kaizen events and tools, and most folks are willing to adopt some of the tools and do Kaizen events, but they're really not willing to change how they manage the business in order to get those long-term results that they really look for, and was the original objective of the lean transformation from the beginning. Interestingly enough, a bearing study of about 1995 that I was able to participate in, and in 2005, by Brandt and Accenture, actually discovered that the success of a transformation to any particular business model, whether that was lean, whether that today is agile, whether it is theory of constraints, Six Sigma, or however mom and pop actually runs the organization, was not so much the tools themselves, but how far the management methodologies permeated the organization into the non-core functional roles. So if you really wanted to get into this 5% group, it isn't enough just to understand that lean is a system and that there are tools that support the system, but you have to be able to translate lean as a system and as an operating model into, say, the non-manufacturing parts of the organization, if you're manufacturing. organizations. So if you went into finance, you would find a lean model there. If you went into product development design, you needed to find a lean model there. If you went into customer service, you needed to find a lean model there. So lean as a system and as an operating model has to actually permeate the organization versus being isolated into one function of the organization. So the ability to get into that 5% is a function of not only understanding and building the model for the lean system in a specific operational area, but it actually has to have a translation to every functional area in the enterprise or in the organization in order for you to first be able to be part of that less than 5% group. Also extend your lean journey beyond 5 years, and number 3, eventually being able to get best in class in a world-class type environment. So that's something that we haven't really talked about. We're just now talking about lean accounting and lean product development design, but if you want to really be successful in your lean transformation, you have to start somewhere, but eventually the entire organization has to be able to operate off of a lean system or Six Sigma system or whatever your preferred system is. It has to permeate the organization. The other thing sometimes is a leadership role as well. Oftentimes the folks that want to lead a transformation may not necessarily be in the best position to lead that transformation. So sometimes we have the path A where we're constantly getting more complex in our lean tools and our lean approach, but we're not really achieving the sustained results from a business performance perspective that you would normally expect. Normally because we just don't have that level of influence if we are middle managers or if we're lean managers or we're staff level change agents. As Art Smalley likes to call these are our lean zealots. They absolutely love the tools, they love the principles, they're true believers. Unfortunately, sometimes they're not in the best position to influence the entire organization. So at best, that path A influences a specific area of the organization and sometimes doesn't permeate the rest of the organization. On the other side, you can have the flip side, and I run into this quite a bit with some of my clients and potential clients, and that is the path of a committed, charismatic leader to a lean transformation. The downside of that is only as good as that charismatic leader is in position. I've had a couple of clients in the past that have had absolutely dedicated lean transformation leaders, from the president, from the CEO down, generally at the president or senior vice president, executive vice president level. Their entire leadership team is committed. They get their whole organization committed, and then at some point they get a new CEO, and the new CEO decides he wants to go a different direction. And of course, if that happens after these key leaders have built such an outstanding operating system, eventually, if they're not allowed to continue with that operating system, then they're generally they're going to find another place. And so when that charismatic leader leaves, the system walks out the door with them. So it's important that we build something beyond a specific leader or a specific staff level change agent. And so you think about it, what we got to do is we actually have to build a process, not a personality. So lean as an operating system has to be based on brilliant processes and brilliant process management. And so as lean transformation engineers, that's what we have to build, and they will generally outlive a specific personality that got us started. So these are some things we need to kind of look at, and if you recognize that you're in one of these areas, you're either on path A or path B, and you want to get to path C, recognizing where you're at in your lean transformation is going to be a critical part of your of your recognition process in order to make those adjustments to move away from personality-driven lean system to a process-based or a system-based lean system. So if you're on a lean transformation or you're about to approach leading a lean transformation, here's some of the things that are going to probably cause your lean transformation to fail if we do not find a way around it. I like to call it the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and oftentimes the more I worked with this, the more I realized they're probably 1,500 pounds, 2,500-pound gorillas in the room. Nevertheless, this gorilla is going to actually fight against you when it comes to your lean transformation, but that's okay. We're going to talk about how we can defeat this 800-pound gorilla today. So number one reason why lean transformations fail is underestimating the existing leadership mindset. So when you think about the senior leaders in the organization and the other organizational leaders, supervisors and so forth, don't underestimate their current thinking around the value of how they currently lead. So underestimating the strength of those current mindsets is oftentimes a point of failure. The other thing is that most of the leaders in your organization and the people in your organization have a weak belief that lean is a management system. They believe it is a collection of tools, they believe it is Kaizen events, and that has benefits, but they don't have the perception that unlike Toyota, lean is an actual operating model and an enterprise management model, and it is a very comprehensive system, and that you have to build this comprehensive system in order to be able to get the benefits from it. So most leaders and organizational personnel in the organization that's going to go through the transformation is going to have a weak belief that lean is anything other than a collection of tools. And so we'll have to be able to fight against that. Underestimating the strength of the existing management systems and routines. So you'd be surprised how often with some of my transformation clients, trying to get from one end of the day to the other end of the day are interrupted with mandated routines that come from their leaders higher up, or the next element that we're going to talk about is the current ERP or enterprise management system that they use. So sometimes my leaders actually have behaviors that are dictated by sending in reports at specific times that are needed to feed the beast of the ERP system. So this next point of failure is underestimating the strength of reinforcing management systems and infrastructures on leader behaviors, their routines, and their commitment. I can't tell you the number of times that we've talked about doing a pull system, and then what comes back from that is, well, we can't change the pull system because we use such and such ERP system, and we can't do a pull system because we have to schedule a push system with our current ERP system that we just installed a few months ago. And before you know it, you find out that there are routines built around these ERP systems, and that the leader behavior is actually shaped by these routines because of these enterprise systems. So don't underestimate the strength of the tentacles of the management system that the organizations, the IT platforms that the organization is using. And the last of the lean transformational failure awareness nodes are underestimating the strength of the existing organizational mindset, people in the organization, and the culture itself that's been allowed to develop. So these are the big bullets, the 800-pound gorillas that we're going to talk about trying to take down today. We're going to use a little science to try to explain how we can overcome this. So hopefully by the end of the presentation today, you have plenty of questions about how to do gorilla wrestling with me today. So there are 3 prerequisites to a lean transformation, and in a way, the first one is almost like a 12-step program. You have to have a strong, clear business case for change. probably the #1 question I get from anyone that I do when I do a talk someplace is, how do I get my senior leadership engaged in a lean transformation? It's the answer. If you can answer that question, it also answers the question, how do I get the rest of the organization involved in a lean transformation? And it really boils down to behaviors. If you want to get senior leadership and the rest of the organization involved in the lean transformation and take it serious, first and foremost, you have to have a strong business case for change. It has to be strong enough that the writing is on the wall. It's a blinding flash of the obvious that you can't do the same thing and expect a different result, and that we have to change how we're doing what we're doing in order to survive, to kind of paraphrase Peter Drucker, and that there has to be a strong business case for changing how we're going to manage the business and how we're going to relate to each other and how we're going to approach our operating model. So that's the first thing. And a lot of times what Art Smalley would always kind of say from his McKinsey days is when we go to work with clients is, what's your $5 million problem? We have to have a $5 million problem or some big price tag, try to quantify from a profitability standpoint or cost perspective a reason to transform to a lean operating model that's big enough that the senior leadership can't afford for it to fail, so they have to be involved with it. So we always ask, so what's your $5 million problem? We're going to use the lean transformation process to actually help you solve this true, clear business need. And if you do that, that's #1, that's going to get the senior leadership involved. #2, if you do it the right way, it'll get the senior leadership team involved by helping them to actually identify their own writing on the wall. And then it becomes a business case we can articulate to the organization as we go through the transformation process to explain to them, here's why we have to do this and why we have to do things differently. So #1, have a strong, clear business case for change. #2, understand that lean, and for example, the Toyota production system, for example, or the Toyota management system as the model, is a system. It is a very comprehensive system, and every part of that system is interrelated to other parts of the system. So it is not a collection of tools. The tools are there just as kind of nerve endings to tell us how well the system's working. So if you understand that lean is a management system from the beginning, then you realize that you've got to transform your management system to a lean management system in order to actually get the potential results that, from a business case standpoint, that you're looking for. And lastly, a lean organization is organized very differently, and we're going to talk about that today. And so we have to build highly capable and highly engaged lean leaders to help us take this message into the organization and help build the organization into a lean culture. So the 3 things that you'll need as prerequisites for a successful lean transformation: #1, strong, clear business case for change; #2, understanding that lean is a system, that lean management system is a system; and #3, that you're going to need to build a leadership infrastructure that can help take this message into the organization and help transform the organization. So you're going to have to invest in lean leadership development. The other thing that we don't talk about very much is there's actually a social transformational process that's part of a lean transformation. Remember, we can't underestimate the strength of the existing organizational behavior and routines. So in order to do that, we're going to need to find ways to disrupt the current routines, the current decision making, the current management and leadership patterns in the organization in order to resettle it into a lean routine and a lean routine model and transformational activities. Once you disrupt the old routines and behavior patterns in the organization, what you have to do very quickly is you have to find the routines to replace it. So after you disrupt the old pattern of routines, you now have to reorient the organization into new routines, which we're going to call Keystone routines, and we will talk about that a little later in the presentation. Once you do that, then it's a matter of indoctrinating the culture of the organization to essentially the culture that's expected in the new transformed organization. So indoctrination, although that's a scary word, what we're really saying is that we have core values, core beliefs, expected behaviors in the lean organization, and we want to train people to those expectations and to include their participation in the transformation as far as improving how they do their work, helping to improve the products, improve the system itself. So those are really expectations. Once we have them trained and once we've kind of led by example as part of the process, then we need to assimilate folks into the lean culture and the lean transformation and the lean business model. So essentially 4 phases that we're not going to be able to go into all of those today, but I need you to understand that if you are truly going to lead a lean transformation, you're going to have to disrupt the current pattern and routines of the organization. You're going to have to reorient to new patterns and routines in the organization that are lean transformation patterns and routines, and then you're going to have to train folks to the expectations of being operable inside of that system, and then assimilate new folks into that culture. So kind of heady stuff. So what we like to say is that if you were to look at a lean transformation pyramid, is that we start essentially at the Lean Leadership Academy, for example, we start working on senior and key leader beliefs, values, principles, their thinking structures, their behaviors, and keystone management routines and leadership routines. So that forms the foundation of what we start with first. We work on these things first. Once we do that, we build a lean management system that is supportive of lean leader beliefs, values, principles, thinking structures, behaviors, and keystone routines. So not only do we have to build a management system around that, we also have to build a supporting organizational structure similar to how Toyota is organized into a matrix team-based organization that can support that lean management system. And then after that, once we have the system in place, then it's about brilliant process management. And so we want to make sure that we Kaizen the process and we standardize the process in order to have mental models. So once we have the mental models, we have in our mind what should be happening, and then through problem solving and Kaizen, be able to increase the capability of that process, which we call brilliant process management. And so where does our tools and techniques in lean show up? Well, it's essentially the nervous system. It tells us the tools and techniques really kind of help us identify pain areas where maybe our processes aren't quite as brilliant as they need to be. So where do we need to focus? Are there elements of our management system that need to evolve? Are there weaknesses in our organizational structure and supporting IT infrastructure? And then, of course, we want to make sure that these tools and techniques also support reinforcing our belief in the system, our values, our principles, our thinking structures, our behaviors, and our keystone routines. So, beyond Little's Law, if you've been around Little's Law, if you've been around lean long enough, you've probably heard about pull systems and continuous flow. So most folks will, if they're experienced in lean, they'll talk about the formula that is essentially a just-in-time formula. It says the average number of items in the system essentially equal the average wait time and the average arrival time, which sometimes we refer to as process versus stagnation time. And so most people who are a little advanced in lean transformation, especially in pull systems and continuous flow and takt time, the just-in-time pillar of the house of TPS. They're very familiar with Little's Law, and it's a function of lead time. But the things that we're going to talk about today are beyond this, and it has more to do with essentially social norms inside of a lean transformation, because both the art and science of a lean transformation isn't just a mechanical process. It is a social process, and if we're going to be successful as a lean transformation, it'll have to be we'll have to improve our social understanding in order to make that transformation and culture be part of our future. So what I like to tell folks is that your role as a lean leader is to build this, and that we have to understand that even lean leadership itself is a discipline. It has its own unique principles, fundamental beliefs, values, thinking structures, expected behaviors, and critical keystone routines. So if you're going to build a lean culture and lead a lean transformation, you have to understand that your lean leadership has to be from a discipline standpoint, because you're going to have those fundamental beliefs. You're going to have principles by which you operate. You have to have core values, thinking structures beyond just the scientific thinking. You're going to have social thinking structures as well, and expected behaviors and keystone routines. So if you were to take a look at this from Toyota's point of view, is that they really never separate the concept of leader in their role. So as you see here, and as Art Smalley shared with me, is that if you were to look at this from a Japanese perspective, Toyota refers to the word osa or cho. So anytime you see cho at the end of the word, so we call it plant manager. Toyota actually literally translates it into plant leader, department leader, area leader, group leader, team leader. And so they understand that the role of leadership is beyond just management. Kind of to paraphrase the old Stephen Covey comment, is that, managers manage things, leaders lead people. You can't lead things and you can't manage people. So if we understand that, then if we're going to lead a lean transformation, we must understand we can't manage that alone. We're going to have to actually lead the transformation of the culture. So as a leader, we must influence and shape what we call the shaping principles. We're going to have to shape the purpose of the organization, shape the timeline of the transformation process. We'll have to actually shape the physical structure of the organization, which is going to be a key element of lean transformation success versus failure, which is to actually change the physical structure of the organization so that it makes it very difficult not to manage and lead from a lean perspective. The problem with most tools is they don't actually change the structure. So therefore, if a tool stops working, after a while, nobody really ever knows it's gone, and it's too easy to undo. We also have to shape the procedures and standards. This is very important from a perspective of modeling, because the organization needs to have models, and so standards in a standard environment gives us a mental model of what should be happening versus what's happening, and have proper problem awareness. It also engages an element of our actual physical brain called mirror neurons. And so what happens when we have modeling patterns and we have standards, we actually engage in the mirror neurons part of the brain, which begins to set up mental models for us to know what should be happening, what is right, what if it's not the way we expect it to be, then there must be a problem, and of course if there's a problem, then how do we respond to those problems? So standards and thinking patterns are a critical part of a lean leader's responsibility to shape those standards, procedures, and thinking patterns. Shaping behaviors. What are the expected behaviors inside of a lean organization for the leaders and for the members of the organization? Then shape the system and the tools. We also have to shape the physical environment as well as the mental and emotional environment. Of course, if you're from a business perspective, the point of lean is to shape results and then shape the culture. Pretty much from the perspective of a lean perspective, if we're shaping those other things, then the culture pretty much is the sum of all of our leadership shaping activities. And so we're going to talk about areas of influence as a lean leader as we lead the transformation, starting with the inner circle that we have here is called inside the team, and there's some social dynamics that are tied to this in something that's called the Dunbar number or the Dunbar principles, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So beginning your lean transformation with your core team, then starting to transform the extended team, what we call outside of the core team, and then shaping the organization, then shaping outside of the organization. So as a leader, we have to shape and lead our transformation, starting with that core team, then moving outward from the core team that we have those high trust relationships with into an area where that's beyond the concept of the organizational trust factor, so or what we call Dunbar's number. So if you were to take a look at how Toyota is organized, you'll see a couple of things at play here. You'll notice that there's generally a ratio of one leader to 5 or 6 team members. Now that team member ratio can actually get up to 8 in some areas, but generally it's a ratio of 1 to 5. So you would have one team leader for 5 team members, one group leader or supervisor for 4 to 5 team leaders, and then so forth. So you can almost calculate the number of leaders that you need in your organization by your current organization number and doing the math for the ratio from 1 to 5. Now, why is it that we still try to struggle, failure point, with trying to adopt lean as a system or even lean tools, but we don't change our organizational structure? We still have one supervisor for an entire shift. And there's no way that you can get beyond firefighting into Kaizen and problem solving as long as you have a 1 to 75 ratio or 1 to 150 ratio. That just doesn't support responding to problems with an and-done system or being able to meet and having a deep job knowledge with every operation on the team, which is an expectation at Toyota. So there's some factors behind Toyota's organization through trial and error that has worked out for them that we often ignore, that we need to understand in order to have a successful lean transformation. So you notice here the general leadership and structure is you're going to have one plant leader, probably have 5 key core department leaders. You'll have 25 area and production leaders, and then 125 group leaders, and as much as 625 team leaders to 2,500 team members. This particular example was an example that Art Smalley pulled together for us based on the Komigo engine plant that he worked at when he was in Japan. So the main emphasis of the leadership inside of Toyota is training these group leaders, supervisors, and team leaders to be very effective leaders for a small team and having deep job knowledge and the ability to lead the team members in problem solving and Kaizen and standards development. But if you were to look at what drives that, the science behind this number here is pretty sound through the work of social anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who understood that in any organization, the smallest, most intimate organization is a pair, which we have in relationships. But core relationships are generally about 5 people. We have a high trust, intimate relationship with at least 5 people. Once we get beyond that, the intimacy starts to fall away, but we can have casual and recognizable relationships with up to 150 people. Now, Dunbar says beyond the 150, we can have transactional relationships with as many as 1,500 people. And believe it or not, there's been some organizational elements. Hewlett-Packard essentially limited the size of their organization kind of early on in their career when they could not hand out the paychecks and recognize who they were handing paychecks out to, and kind of capped their organizational growth structure to 1,500 people. If it got beyond 1,500 people, they would subdivide into the divisions that we know of today. Even J.L. Gore Company will limit their manufacturing organizations to 150 in order to keep a stronger relationship among their manufacturing organizational teams. So there's plenty of evidence to say that Toyota's approach to designing and organizing in factors of 5 into a matrix team-based organization is one of their competitive advantages, and allows them to have a detailed knowledge of the work and build good team relations. It's very difficult to respond. It's easier to respond to the andons if I'm a team leader that 5 team members can pull the andon for than it would be for 75 team members. So the math behind Toyota's organizational structure is based on Robin Dunbar's principle, what's called the Dunbar number. And so if you understand that and try to earn the right to get to the Dunbar number, you're going to be more successful with your lean transformation and be more responsive and be able to build good relations and respond to problems and Kaizen the work. Another element that was shared with me not too long ago by Rich Sheridan, the author of Joy Inc. and the CEO of Menlo Innovations, and how he worked, is when I was talking to him about Toyota Production System and trying to find a way to measure the value of this organization, the organizational structure. He mentioned that Bob Metcalfe's law of exponential network value was the way to look at that. And so back in the 1960s, Robert Metcalfe actually looked at the value of networks, or back in the 70s, excuse me, and looked at the value of a network was essentially a multiple of its connections. So if you look at Toyota, their teams are all part of a network model. So if you were to take a look at my graph here, the value, the dollar value of a network model is n squared by the number of networks in that model. So if you have 2 nodes, then 2 square is the value in dollars, you know, and so if you have 5 connected nodes in the network, then it's 5 square. And so if you have 12 nodes, it's 12 square. But then it's 12 times the network nodes of each one of those nodes. So where Toyota has 1 team leader with 5 team members, that you can see the value of their value to the organization. You can actually value that based on Metcalfe's law. But there's another principle at play as well, and that is something that's called Moore's law, which is that back in the 1960s, that Gordon Moore from Intel basically discovered that the power of transistors would double every 12 to 24 months. So you can almost see the evolution of the projected Internet of Things based on Moore's law. And so essentially every year to 2 years, the capability and capacity of an intelligent system, which a lean team is and a lean organization is, will double itself both in cost reduction and in capability. So what we want to do is we want to combine the concepts behind Metcalfe's law of exponential growth and Moore's law of doubling of capability. So how do we do that? Well, so when I talk with the organizations, I basically talk to them about the value of their organization. The number, if we get more to a Toyota-style team-based organization, then those are all nodes, and that we can value that organization by the number of nodes. Now, the better connected that each one of those nodes are to other connections, then we can also square the value of that. Now, on top of that, if we want to increase the capability of each of those teams, every time we add a skill and a capability, such as the ability to problem solve, the ability to create standards, the ability to Kaizen, every time we add that capability to a team, then we're able to realize the cost reduction and the social intelligence factor that Moore's law applies to Metcalfe's law. So as we increase the capability of the team's own internal capability to problem solve, create standards, Kaizen, then we'll double the cost reduction efforts of that team every 12 to 24 months. And at the same time, the more teams we have, we're able to realize more value from those teams at an exponential growth rate while cost comes down. Yep, that's kind of heady stuff, but that's the science behind the organization. The other thing that we talked about is the ability to interrupt those existing management patterns. And one of the things that I strongly recommend with all of the clients that I work with is to physically change the environment. And I happen to use the Obeya concept, the big room concept, in order to accelerate the lean transformation. So that by underestimating the existing management routines and in management mindsets, one of the things that the Obeya can do for you is it helps to take down that old mindset and those old routines, because we build the routines, what we call Keystone routines, around the activities of the big room concept, or the Obeya, where we all come together and we're able to communicate critical things, and we're able to actually pattern a cadence of lean leadership and lean management routines that is part of the Obeya operation. So, and the biggest thing is it ensures communication, collaboration, timely problem solving, and it allows for organizational learning. It'll accelerate leader development by having a place where all the leaders come to discuss where are we at, what are our problems, what should we be working on, and doing that as part of a regular routine of your daily and weekly operations. One of the other things, so I would highly encourage accelerating your transformation through the use of a physical Obeya. It also interrupts flow patterns of activities as well. One of the places where I kind of learned about that is, if you'll notice in the center of this picture right here, you have the information carousel at Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan. Before they put this information kiosk in the middle of Grand Central Terminal, as people moved from one terminal node to the other terminal node, as people were entering and exiting the trains that were coming in, they would often run into each other because there was nothing to interrupt their pattern. Their pattern was focused on their routines. Once they put essentially a traffic circle in the center of Grand Central Terminal, it changed the behavior of the people in the terminal. So one of the things that what happens now is there's a natural flow of what we call patterns of flow that people will tend to conform to, and so they will now walk around in a flow around the information kiosk in the center of Grand Central Terminal. In the same way, you can interrupt existing patterns of organizational management and management routines with your central carousel being an Obeya. So we essentially physically build an Obeya out in the middle of the organization as we free up floor space that allows us to build management routines and the flow of leadership management behavior around that Obeya that allows us to essentially put coordination in as a physical apparatus in the transformation. So the theory behind Obeya is pretty simple. If you dedicate the space and time and coordination and problem solving, then the organizational barriers, those existing mindsets and behaviors, will be minimized. So one of the things, so it allows us to maintain proper awareness of problem in real time or near real time time set and opportunities to our customers. It also allows us to listen to other team member concerns and solve problems together, accelerate lean leadership development and team member development, and then we'll also have the opportunity to reach our full potential as a lean organization through having a place where we come together that changes how we relate to each other. And then the Obeya promotes coordination, strategy, flexibility while leveraging the expertise and support of our teammates from different areas, so we are able to get cognitive diversity that is part of the Obeya process. So the end result is effective solutions and actions that can be developed and implemented quickly. So to give you, one of those Keystone routines that we talked about, and Keystone routine is a critical routine that sets the pattern for all other behaviors in the organization. So most folks talk about their morning stand-up communications meeting. Yes, that's critical, but that in and of itself is not a Keystone routine other than having a morning stand-up meeting. One of the critical elements of this morning stand-up meeting is having the leader of the Obeya to establish what we call the top 5 priorities for the day, or the top 5 priorities for the week. And so the top 5 priorities for the day are generally a combination of critical problem solving, critical transformation activities, and critical people development process. So to kind of wrap that up, if you're going to be in a lean transformation, you also have to realize the critical role of the leader in creating that culture of excellence. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Bob Miller of Arch's leadership and former past director of the Shingo Institute was very influential with me on this perspective, is that the most important work a leader will ever do is that you cannot delegate your role in creating a culture of excellence based on principles. So if you're going to do that, then how do you do that? First, as a leader in your transformation, expect excellence. Create a common language as part of your transformation process. Create expected beliefs, values, and behavior as part of your transformation process. Create Keystone routines for your organization as part of your transformation process, and then create your culture artifacts. Have something that's unique to you that people recognize as being part of your transformational experience that's an artifact. And then make sure you have rituals and celebrations that reinforce that culture. And then I always like to say, make sure you have a good war story. So everybody needs a war story, and a good war story of your lean transformation experience to pass on to the next generation is critical to creating a lasting culture. So Keystone routines, and a good place to look at what Keystone routines are about, is the work that Charles Duhigg did in his original book called The Power of Habit. And what he said is that if you're going to have a Keystone routine, these are initiating routines that you want to set up a cue, such as your first in the morning meeting in the Obeya, and then have a routine or a habit loop. What are the things that I'm going to do? What is my cadence of activities for my transformation today? And at the end of the day, how do we recognize that? How do we reward the behavior of advancing the transformation? This in and of itself is probably an entire presentation by itself. So just keep in mind that you need to establish new lean leadership and cadence activities as keystone routines to advance and support your transformation. Just remember that if we reduce culture to a set of tools and programs, then we'll lose our people, as Bob Miller states here. So 6 key things that you can do to defeat your 800-pound gorilla. Number 1, make a strong business case for your transformation in order to engage your senior leaders and the rest of the organization. Number 2, organize for engagement and response. And one of the best ways to do that is to tap into the power of the Obeya. Number 3, interrupt existing routines and with physical changes, such as with an Obeya or a war room, and make sure that that war room is regulated by a very defined leadership and management cadence of routines, which we'll call keystone routines, and they should be new patterns, new routines. Lead by example, so if other people can see how they should perform and how they should act in your lean transformation. In order to overcome the existing ERP or IT platform management infrastructures, learn to speak the language of the management IT platform, but don't go native, because at some point when you understand what you need to do in lean, you'll need to tell that ERP system how to do that from a lean perspective, not from the way the ERP system runs. And then make sure you provide, as leaders, and kind of quote Russ Scafferty on this, we as leaders must provide every possible way for our people and our leadership team to participate in problem solving, making improvements, and building team relations. So a couple of recommended readings for you to follow up with. Charles Duhigg's got 2 books up here that I really think every lean leader should read: The Power of Habit and Smarter, Faster, Better. Rich Carlgard and Mike Ballone's work on Team Genius help you understand the social science of organizational performance, and then Salim Ismail's book Exponential Organizations really kind of explains how Metcalfe's law and how Moore's law can help your organization transform to a better, high-performing lean organization. So with that, I would like to invite you also to come hear my keynote on the expanded version of this at the Shingo Summit in Knoxville, Tennessee, this September. Other than that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark and answer any questions we have time for. Mark,
thanks.
All back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'm going to pull the and-on cord and suggest that even though because we're running out of time, there were a bunch of really good questions. Sam, maybe you and I can just record that Q&A as a separate file, like a podcast file that we can send out to the attendees that they can listen to.
Sounds good. Maybe do like a little Q&A podcast. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
So we'll send that out to everybody, but I do want to make a couple quick announcements real quick. Of course, we have our KaiNexus webinar library, webinars on demand, which you can find at kainexus.com. Look for that in the Learn menu. Our next webinars, we actually have 2 webinars coming up in September. But we have 2 presentations and webinars coming up in September. September 13th, we're going to have Harry Kenworthy, who is going to be giving a webinar called The 10 Commandments of Lean for Government, but it's actually very applicable to other settings. Harry has worked in manufacturing, has been doing work with Lean in government in the past couple of years. So that's going to be September 13th. And then on September 20th, we have one of our KaiNexus customers, Erin Edwards from Four Seasons Produce. She's going to be giving a webinar titled Turning Continuous Improvement and a PMO into an Innovation Team. So you can sign up for both of those, see the learning objectives and more at www.kainexus.com/webinars. So again, I want to thank Our presenter today is Sam MacPherson. Sam, thank you so much for presenting today.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to share today.
And I want to thank everybody for attending. So on behalf of the entire team here at KaiNexus, this is Mark Graban signing off.